The shortcut exists. It's on the map. It saves roughly 40 miles. And professional truck drivers, people who have logged millions of miles across every miserable stretch of American highway, won't touch it. Ask one why, and he'll look at you the way a man looks at someone who just asked if they should pet the rattlesnake. Not angry, not even surprised, just tired. Like the answer should be obvious to anyone who has spent more than 20 minutes thinking about it. The road has a name, it has a surface, it has signs at both ends, and it will absolutely destroy you if you let it. The road itself. There is a particular kind of optimism that only exists on paper. It lives in the white space between 2 points on a map, in the clean straight line that a GPS draws between where you are and where you need to be, in the number of miles saved and the minutes recovered and the fuel not burned. It is the optimism of someone looking at a map in an air-conditioned room, which is a very different thing from the optimism of someone actually driving the road. The road in question cuts through the Nevada interior, roughly parallel to US Route 93. Threading through a corridor of basin and range terrain between the flatlands south of Ely and the high desert north of Alamo. On a standard road atlas, it looks reasonable. Paved surface, 2 lanes, connects 2 numbered highways, appears to shave a meaningful chunk off the standard freight route down 93 through Pioche and Caliente. 40 miles give or take. In a passenger car, that is maybe 35 minutes. In a loaded semi doing legal highway speed, it is the difference between making your delivery window and missing it. This matters. In commercial trucking, delivery windows are not suggestions. They are contractual obligations with financial penalties attached. A driver who misses a window does not simply apologize and move on. He answers for it in dollars, in his relationship with the dispatcher, in his rating with the carrier. So when a road appears on the map that promises 40 miles of salvation, a driver notices, he calculates, he considers. And then, if he has been driving long enough and knows the right people, he makes a phone call and somebody on the other end of that phone says 3 words that end the conversation. Don't do it. That advice travels through the trucking community the way all important advice travels through that community, which is to say not through any official channel, not through any government publication or carrier safety bulletin, but through the CB radio, the truck stop booth, and the parking lot conversation at 2 in the morning when 2 drivers who have never met before discover they are running the same corridor, and one of them has a story. The story, in this case, goes back further than most people realize, and it starts not with a truck, but with a geological fact that the people who built this road either did not understand or chose not to think about too carefully, what the map doesn't show. Most people think of Nevada as flat, empty, the place you drive across to get somewhere else. And parts of it are flat, but not for the reason you think. The parts that are flat are the bottoms of ancient lakes, basins in the geological sense, floors of things that used to hold water and now hold the memory of it. The Basin and Range Province, which covers most of the state, was formed by the Earth's crust pulling apart over millions of years. Where it pulled apart, blocks of rock dropped to form valleys. Adjacent blocks stayed high to form mountain ranges. The result is a landscape of alternating basins and ranges running north to south like wrinkles across the face of the desert. Range, basin, all the way to the horizon. Here's the problem. The floors of those ancient lake beds are composed of fine-grained clay and silt that has one deeply unpleasant property. When it is dry, it is hard. Hard enough to drive on, hard enough to look at, and conclude it is stable ground. It is not stable ground. It is stable ground until it gets wet, at which point it becomes something with the structural integrity of warm butter. The technical term is expansive soil. What it expands into when wet is a trap. This road crosses 3 of those basins. It also crosses 2 dry washes that can fill without warning from a storm 20 miles away that you will never see coming. And 11 miles from the northern end, it climbs a grade of 9.5%. which does not sound like much until you are hauling 40 tons down the other side on a surface that curves. None of this is on the map. On the map, it is just a line, thin and promising, drawn by someone who was not standing on it. The engineering disaster nobody talks about. In the late 1970s, Nevada received federal highway improvement funds as part of a broader rural road program. The stated purpose was upgrading secondary routes serving mining and agricultural operations across the interior. Reasonable enough? The money was real, the need was real, and this corridor got flagged because a mine about 30 miles off the main road needed better access for haul trucks moving or concentrate to a processing facility near the southern junction. Now here is the part that matters, so stay with me for a second. The road was not upgraded for general freight traffic. It was not upgraded for cross-state trucking or regional commerce or any of the uses that would eventually find it on a GPS and treat it like a viable shortcut. It was built for one specific purpose: short-haul mining trucks. A defined route, drivers who knew every rock and wash crossing by name. The project paved what had been gravel, widened it slightly, added culverts at the wash crossings, and called it finished, completed in 1979. A perfectly adequate road for the job it was designed to do. The mining operation it was designed to serve closed in 1981. 2 years. The mine lasted 2 years on the fresh pavement. And here's the thing, nobody who builds a road ever wants to reckon with. Roads do not close when the reason for them closes. Closing a road requires formal process, signage changes, interagency coordination, sometimes county-level legislation. Leaving a road open requires nothing. It requires less than nothing. It requires only the absence of a decision. So they left it open, reduced maintenance to essentially nothing. And the road began doing what roads built on expansive desert soil always eventually do. It started failing. By 1983, the second basin crossing had developed what engineers call alligatoring, a pattern of longitudinal and transverse cracking that gives the pavement the appearance of reptile skin. The soil beneath was swelling when wet and shrinking when dry, and it was not doing this uniformly. The rigid pavement above cracked along every fault line those movements created. That spring, after an unusually wet winter, a 60-foot section of one lane dropped 14 inches overnight. A driver who crossed it told the county road department it felt like hitting a curb that wasn't there a minute ago. The county patched it with cold mix asphalt. They did not investigate the subgrade. They did not ask why a road had dropped 14 inches or what that implied about the miles of identical terrain on either side of the failure. They patched it the way you patch things when the budget is tight and the road is 30 miles from anyone likely to complain about it. The patch failed within 18 months. In 1989, a state transportation engineer included the corridor in a routine secondary route survey. His report runs 23 pages. His conclusions were not subtle. The road was unsuitable for vehicles above a certain gross vehicle weight. The basin crossings required full subgrade reconstruction, not surface treatment, to perform reliably. He estimated reconstruction at between $400,000 and $600,000. He recommended weight restriction signs at both ends immediately. The signs went up: 12-ton limit, north and south. To put 12 tons in perspective, a loaded passenger car is about 2 tons. A pickup towing a trailer is 5 or 6. A semi-tractor with an empty trailer is already over 12. Fully loaded, it is closer to 40. The signs were not a suggestion. They were the difference between a road being used within its actual capacity and a road being slowly demolished by vehicles it was never engineered to carry. The signs lasted about 4 years. Then a county commission reorganization in the early 1990s created a gap in maintenance responsibility that nobody noticed until the signs were already gone. The state assumed the county was replacing them as they faded. The county assumed the state had absorbed the route. The signs bleached and cracked and became unreadable in the desert sun, and nobody replaced them because nobody drove out to check, because the road was 30 miles from the nearest town. In Nevada, 30 miles from the nearest town means 30 miles from anyone whose daily life gives them a single reason to notice. The drivers who learned the hard way. Here's where I should tell you about the gravel contract because it explains something that would otherwise seem like simple negligence. In 1991, a company with a lease on mineral rights in the basin area needed to move significant quantities of gravel from a processing site near the road to a construction project near the Southern Highway Junction. This was not a small operation. We are talking about a multi-year contract worth enough that the people involved had a strong financial interest in keeping the road open to heavy vehicles. Weight restriction signs would have made the hauling operation either illegal or significantly more expensive, because going around meant adding approximately 60 miles per round trip. I am not saying anyone removed the signs deliberately. I am saying the signs were not replaced when they faded, that the gravel hauling operation ran for several years on that road, that it ran with vehicles well over the posted limit, and that nobody in any official capacity appears to have objected. The State Transportation Department's internal correspondence from that period, what there is of it, focuses almost entirely on the major highway corridors. The secondary routes in the interior got what attention they got, which was not much. By the time the gravel contract ended in the mid-1990s, the road had been carrying heavy loads for the better part of a decade on a surface that the 1989 survey had described as already failing. The basin crossings were worse. The grade section had developed edge cracking severe enough that the effective lane width in places was narrower than the standard 12 feet. The culverts at the wash crossings were partially blocked with debris from flood events, and the road was still on the map, still showed up on GPS routing systems as a viable through route, still looked from the air and on paper like a reasonable shortcut between 2 points on the Nevada highway system. The truckers figured it out the hard way. The CB radio designation for this road, the name that drivers used when warning each other about it, is not something I am going to repeat here because it is colorful in a way that would require a different kind of disclaimer at the start of this video. What I will tell you is that it stuck, and that by the middle of the 1990s, the name was understood by virtually every driver running freight through the eastern Nevada corridor. The lore accumulated in the way trucking lore always accumulates, which is through specific incidents attached to specific names or at least specific descriptions, not urban legends. Documented disasters that happened to real people who made a reasonable decision based on available information and paid for it in ways that ranged from expensive to catastrophic. The first incident that entered the permanent rotation of cautionary stories involved a refrigerated produce truck, a reefer in the industry vocabulary, running strawberries from a distribution hub in Idaho down to Las Vegas in the summer of 1988. The driver, running behind schedule, saw the shortcut on his paper atlas and took it. He made it through the basin crossings, made it up the grade on the northern side, and then on the descent, discovered that the road surface on the far side of the grade was not what his speed required it to be. The edge of the pavement had crumbled away on the outside of a curve. He corrected. The trailer swung. A fully loaded reefer trailer, with its high center of gravity and the dynamics of a pendulum attached to a pivot point, does not forgive correction errors at speed on compromised pavement. The truck jackknifed. The trailer went off the road into the scrub. Nobody was seriously hurt, which was fortunate because the nearest tow operation capable of handling a jackknife semi was 83 miles away and did not have the equipment to handle the recovery on the first attempt. The strawberries did not make it to Las Vegas, or rather they did eventually, but not in a condition that anyone was going to eat. The second incident, the one that circulates most frequently among drivers who know the road, happened in September of 1991. A tanker truck carrying a liquid chemical product, the specific contents of which I have seen described differently in different accounts, was southbound on the shortcut when a flash flood event filled the southern wash crossing. The driver saw the water and stopped. This was the correct decision. The incorrect decision, made after the water appeared to drop, was to attempt the crossing before the road surface had been assessed. The culvert had been partially blocked by debris from the flood. The water had not, in fact, dropped to a safe level. It had pooled behind the debris and was flowing across the road surface at a depth that was not visible from inside the cab at night. The tanker went into the crossing and the road surface gave way beneath the front axles. Not dramatically. The truck did not plunge into a chasm. It settled, slowly and then definitively, into saturated subgrade that had lost all its load-bearing capacity, and simply absorbed the vehicle up to its frame rails on the driver's side. The truck was not going anywhere under its own power. Recovery equipment arrived 6 days later. 6 days. The driver was retrieved before that by a rancher who happened to be checking fence line on the eastern edge of his property and spotted the truck from a distance. Without that rancher, the driver's options would have been to walk to the highway, which was possible but not trivial in September heat, or wait and hope. 6 days for the truck. The driver told the story at every truck stop between Elko and Kingman for the next 3 years. The informal blacklist that developed from these and a dozen smaller incidents spread entirely through human communication. No official warning, no carrier bulletin, no state advisory, just drivers telling drivers, dispatchers passing the word, the accumulation of specific bad outcomes attached to a specific road, creating a consensus that no amount of saved mileage was worth testing. By the early 2000s, it was established. You did not take that road in a truck. You did not take it in anything you valued. The question of why it was still on the map was one that most drivers had stopped asking because the answer, in their experience, was that maps are made by people who are not driving the road. The government knew the nearest tow operation capable of moving a loaded semi is, depending on which end of the road you break down on, somewhere between 78 and 91 miles away. I want you to sit with that number for a moment because it does not behave like a normal number. It does not mean 90 minutes. It does not mean a bad afternoon. It means that if something goes wrong on this road, the first question is not how long until help arrives. The first question is whether anyone knows you are there at all. Cell service in the corridor was essentially non-existent until the mid-2000s and remains unreliable today. Coverage maps show signal in the area, which is technically accurate if you are standing on a ridgeline at the correct elevation with the wind behind you and perhaps a small prayer. On the road surface, in the basin, which is the low point of the terrain, the ridgelines are between you and the towers. The signal is not there. A driver with a modern smartphone, full battery, clear day, cannot make a call from the worst sections of this road. He can watch the bars disappear one at a time and then sit in the silence of a place that has no interest in his schedule or his problems. What the government knew is documented. The 1989 survey identified the problem in plain language. The recommendation was clear. The funding for full reconstruction was not available, and a lightly traveled secondary route in the Nevada interior was always going to lose that budget argument to a bridge in a populated county. That part is genuinely understandable. Triage is real. What is harder to understand is the signs. The signs were the cheap part, paint and metal, and one person driving out once a year to confirm they were still standing. That process either did not exist or was not followed. And a gravel hauling contract that depended on that road being open to heavy vehicles just happened to be running during the years the signs were absent. There is no document showing anyone made that happen deliberately. There is only the sequence of events laid out in order and the conclusions you are capable of drawing yourself. What's actually out there? The only structure visible from the road for most of its length is a relay station that was decommissioned in the 1980s and now stands empty, its equipment removed, its windows gone, its doors secured with a chain that has been compromised at some point and now hangs loose. The relay station was part of a communications network that predated satellite technology and was made obsolete by it. It is, in the landscape, a monument to the idea that connectivity is not permanent, that infrastructure decays, that the desert reclaims things. About 12 miles from the southern end, there is evidence of a cattle operation. Corrals mostly collapsed, a water tank rusted through, a small shed with a collapsed roof, and the remains of equipment inside that has been there long enough that identifying the manufacturer requires some creative interpretation. The operation, based on the style of the corrals and the equipment, appears to have closed sometime in the 1980s or 1990s. Nobody runs cattle in this particular basin anymore for reasons that anyone who has spent an afternoon there will intuitively understand. There are no services on this road. There is no gas. There is no water. There is no shade structure of any kind. In summer, the basin floor reaches temperatures that rival the low end of what Death Valley produces, not 130 degrees. But 115 is not a rare occurrence, and 115 in a vehicle that has broken down and is no longer running air conditioning, with no cell service, and the nearest human being somewhere over the horizon is not a situation you want to be in while waiting for help that is 90 miles away. The road has a sign at the northern entrance, a standard white reassurance marker with a route number, a speed limit sign, a sign indicating the distance to the southern junction. None of these signs mention weight limits, none mention road conditions, none mention that emergency services in the event of a serious accident will require a response time measured not in the minutes that urban drivers take for granted, but in hours, assuming the call gets through at all. The sign situation is, in the understated language of transportation engineering, inadequate. The road today. People still drive this road. Not many, but some. Passenger car drivers who find it on Google Maps and see the mileage savings and have no particular reason to know what they are getting into. Off-road enthusiasts who have heard about it and want to see what the fuss is about, which is a different category entirely and for whom the road holds a different kind of appeal. Ranchers and miners with specific local knowledge who know exactly which sections to avoid and when. The occasional driver who simply does not believe the lore and wants to form his own opinion, which is a reasonable impulse that sometimes ends reasonably and sometimes does not. In the passenger car case, the road is manageable under most conditions. A modern passenger vehicle weighs somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 pounds. The road surface, even in its degraded state, can usually support that. The grade is steep but navigable. The wash crossings are impassable in flood conditions, but flood conditions are visible, and most drivers will stop at obvious flowing water. The cell service issue applies equally to passenger cars, but a passenger car driver who gets stuck or breaks down faces a different order of problem than a truck driver in the same situation. They can walk. They are not responsible for recovering an 80,000-pound vehicle from a collapsed roadbed. The stakes are lower, although the desert does not ultimately care what you are driving when things go wrong. The road today is not significantly better than it was in the 1990s. The basin crossings have been patched multiple times, and each patch is a layer of information about how many times the road has failed in that spot. The grade section still has the edge cracking that narrows the effective driving surface. The culverts at the wash crossings are partially functional. Fixing it properly would require the subgrade reconstruction that the 1989 survey recommended. That survey's estimated cost, adjusted for inflation and updated material and labor costs, would today be somewhere in the range of $3 to $4 million for the full reconstruction, depending on who you ask. Nevada DOT has not allocated those funds. Nye County, which has nominal maintenance responsibility for portions of the road, does not have those funds to allocate. The road exists in the funding gap between a route important enough to stay open and a route important enough to fix. So it stays open, and it stays broken, and it stays on the map. The lesson the desert keeps teaching. Here's the thing about Nevada's interior that keeps asserting itself every time you try to tell a story about a specific road or a specific place or a specific failure of engineering or planning. The Nevada interior is enormous, truly enormous, in the way that the word enormous stops conveying meaning because the scale exceeds what the word was built to describe. Nevada is the 7th largest state by area. Its population is about 3 million people, most of whom live in Las Vegas or Reno. The rest of the state, the vast majority of its land area, holds the remainder of those 3 million people spread across a landscape the size of several New England states combined. In that landscape, there are roads, many roads. Some of them are maintained, some of them are not. Some of them were built for purposes that no longer exist. Some of them carry weight restrictions that have faded from their signs. Some of them cross terrain that only reveals its character under specific conditions that may not be present on the day you decide the shortcut looks good, but will absolutely be present eventually. The road we have been talking about is not unique. It is representative. It is one specific example of a category that exists across the entire Nevada interior, and for that matter, across the interior of every western state where the land was settled faster than it was understood. Roads built for mines that closed. Roads paved over surfaces that looked stable and weren't. Roads that stayed on maps because removing them requires more administrative effort than leaving them there. Roads that ruin equipment and sometimes kill people because the gap between what the map shows and what the road actually is can be, in the desert, the difference between inconvenience and catastrophe. The truckers who refuse to take the shortcut are not being irrational. They are not being overcautious or superstitious or set in their ways. They are applying knowledge that was paid for by other people at considerable expense and passed forward through the only reliable information network that existed before the internet and still functions better than the internet for this specific kind of local, granular, consequential knowledge, which is the network of people who drive these roads for a living and talk to each other about what they find. The trucking community's collective decision to avoid this road is a form of institutional memory. It is the road's actual reputation, as opposed to its cartographic reputation, transmitted from driver to driver over decades in the specific, detailed, experience-based language of people who cannot afford to be wrong about a road. The sign at the northern end still says what it says: route number, speed limit, distance to junction. It does not say what the drivers know. It cannot. Signs are made by people in offices, and what the drivers know was earned on the road itself. In the dark, in the heat, in the moment when the pavement did something it was not supposed to do. And the only question that mattered was whether the person behind the wheel had heard the right story from the right person at the right truck stop before they made the turn. The shortcut is still there. 40 miles, still on the map, still promising, in the clean white space between 2 points, something that the desert has been disproving for decades. Don't take it. That is the whole lesson. It was figured out by people who learned it the hard way, written down in no official document that anyone will hand you at the start of your trip, and passed forward in the only currency the desert seems to respect, which is the story of what happened to the last person who didn't listen.